Saturday was going perfectly until this happened. Royal kings, royal guards, king's horse guards. The sun had just begun to climb above the horizon, casting a warm golden glow across the grand walls of the royal castle. It was Saturday, and for once the castle was unusually quiet. The usual bustle of busy courtiers, servants, and knights had been replaced by a calm serenity that felt almost magical. King Aldrich, a man known for his wisdom and kindness, was determined to enjoy this rare morning free from his usual royal duties. He had been longing for a day like this for weeks, a day where he could leave the heavy crown aside, walk among the castle gardens, and spend time with the animals he loved so dearly. His favorite among them were his horses, majestic creatures that had been trained since birth to respond to his commands. Today, he had decided, he would ride his prized stallion, Orion, through the wide, cobblestone courtyard, accompanied by his trusted horse guards. The castle's stables were alive with gentle movement. The smell of fresh hay and the soft whinnying of horses filled the air. The stable hands moved quietly but efficiently, brushing the animals with care and speaking to them in soothing tones. Aldrich always said that the horses could sense fear or impatience, so every interaction in the stables was calm and deliberate. The royal guards assigned to the stables were among the finest in the kingdom. They were tall, disciplined men and women, each trained in horseback riding, swordsmanship, and the art of protecting the king. They wore crisp uniforms that gleamed in the morning sunlight, and their polished boots clicked on the stone floors as they performed their duties. Despite their disciplined demeanor, there was a sense of warmth among them, a camaraderie that made the stables feel more like a family home than a part of a fortress. King Aldrich walked among the horses, greeting each one with a kind word and a gentle pat. Orion, a black stallion with a glossy coat and intelligent eyes, neighed softly when he saw his master approaching. The king laughed, a low, pleasant sound that echoed in the high ceilings of the stable. "Good morning, old friend," he said. "Are you ready for our ride today?" Orion responded by stamping his hoof and tossing his mane, as if to say, "Absolutely." The horse guards smiled at the familiar exchange. They had seen the king and Orion together countless times, and the bond between man and horse was something even they found remarkable. Today, like every other perfect Saturday, they were prepared to accompany the king, ensuring his safety while allowing him to enjoy the ride. As the horses were saddled and bridled, the king moved toward the courtyard. The early morning sun highlighted the castle's magnificent architecture, the tall towers, the carved stone walls, and the banners fluttering gently in the breeze. There was a sense of peace in the air that made the king's heart feel light. He had no meetings scheduled, no urgent letters to sign, no disputes to settle. For once, the weight of the crown felt like it had lifted, if only for a few hours. The horse guards lined up beside their mounts, their expressions serious but calm. They had trained for years, and their movements were precise, almost like a well-rehearsed dance. Each guard knew exactly where to position themselves, how to maintain formation, and how to react if anything unexpected happened. But today there was no hint of danger, just the promise of a peaceful ride. King Aldrich mounted Orion with practiced ease, his movements graceful and confident. The horse responded immediately, standing tall and proud, ready to follow his master wherever he led. The king's eyes scanned the courtyard, taking in the beauty of the day. The fountain sparkled in the morning light, and the flowers in the garden swayed gently in the breeze. Birds chirped from the trees, adding a cheerful soundtrack to the quiet of the castle. As the group began their ride, the rhythm of hooves against the stone floor created a soothing cadence. The king felt a sense of freedom that was rare in his royal life. Here, among the horses and guards, he could forget the pressures of ruling a kingdom and simply enjoy the moment. He glanced at the horse guards riding beside him, their faces alert but relaxed, and felt a deep appreciation for their loyalty and skill. The ride through the courtyard was more than just a routine activity. It was a tradition. Every Saturday, the king would take this time to connect with his horses, to feel the wind on his face, and to remember why he loved the simple joys in life. Orion moved with elegance, his muscles rippling beneath his sleek coat, responding to every subtle command from the king. The guards matched the pace, their horses moving in perfect harmony, creating a scene of balance and order that was almost like a living painting. As they continued, the king allowed himself to relax even more. He thought about the week behind him, filled with decisions and responsibilities, and how rare it was to have a morning that belonged entirely to him. He smiled, feeling a sense of gratitude for the small pleasures that often went unnoticed. Orion's soft neigh, the warmth of the sun, the gentle chatter of his guards as they spoke quietly among themselves. The castle grounds stretched out before them, offering a variety of paths for the morning ride. Today, the king chose the longer route, winding through the gardens and past the smaller courtyards where servants tended to flowers and vegetables. Children of the castle who had come to watch the horses waved shyly at the king, and he waved back, enjoying their innocent excitement. Even in moments of simplicity, there was a reminder of the life he had pledged to serve. The horse guards maintained their positions, some riding slightly ahead, others alongside, and a few at the rear. Their eyes scanned the surroundings, trained to notice even the slightest disturbance. But today there was nothing to worry about. No signs of trouble, no threats, no urgency. Just the soft clop of hooves, the gentle sway of the banners in the breeze, and the quiet rhythm of a kingdom waking up to a beautiful morning. As they reached a small hill overlooking the main courtyard, King Aldrich allowed Orion to slow to a gentle trot. He took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill his lungs, and marveled at how perfect the morning felt. The sun cast long shadows behind the towers, creating a painting of light and stone that seemed almost unreal in its beauty. For a moment, he allowed himself to forget that he was a king and simply felt like a man enjoying a peaceful morning on horseback. The horse guards exchanged smiles and quiet words of encouragement, pleased to see their king so relaxed and happy. They too found joy in these rides, not just in the duty of protecting the king, but in the chance to share in a simple pleasure, a reminder that even within the walls of a great castle, life could hold moments of serenity and joy. The horses moved together as a team, the rhythm of their steps echoing like a song of harmony. King Aldrich gently patted Orion's neck, whispering words of praise, and felt a profound sense of connection not just with his horse, but with the world around him. For a while, it seemed that nothing could disturb the perfection of the morning. Little did the king know, however, that this perfect Saturday was about to take an unexpected turn. As they rode through the courtyard, the soft tranquility would soon be broken by an event no one could have predicted. But for now, the sun shone brightly, the horses moved gracefully, and the castle basked in the quiet beauty of a Saturday morning that felt like it could last forever. The morning air remained crisp as King Aldrich and his horse guards continued their ride, moving steadily through the castle grounds. The horses' hooves made soft clopping sounds on the cobblestone paths, blending with the distant calls of birds. Everything seemed peaceful, almost too perfect. The king's mind wandered, thinking about small pleasures he often neglected. The laughter of children in the gardens, the bright colors of the flowers, and the sound of water trickling in the fountains. It was a morning that reminded him why he loved the life he had chosen, not for power or glory, but for the moments of calm and beauty that could be found even in a busy castle. The horse guards rode with measured precision, their eyes occasionally scanning the surroundings out of habit, though there were no immediate threats. They had been trained to anticipate danger, to notice the smallest change in the air or movement, and to act instantly if the king's safety was at risk. Still, there was no urgency today. Their horses were steady, disciplined, and loyal, matching the king's pace as if they could sense his calm mood. As they approached the smaller courtyard near the east tower, one of the younger horse guards, a man named Joran, noticed something unusual. A few of the stable hands were hurrying, their movements frantic rather than the usual calm efficiency. Joran's brow furrowed as he nudged his horse slightly, slowing down to get a better look. "Something's off," he murmured to the guard riding beside him. The other guard, an experienced rider named Selwyn, glanced over and nodded. "Perhaps a horse got restless in the stables. Nothing more," he said, though his voice carried a hint of concern. Guards were trained to remain calm, even when something unusual occurred. Still, instinctively, Selwyn felt that they should remain alert. King Aldrich, noticing the slight change in expression among his guards, raised an eyebrow. "Is something wrong?" he asked, his voice calm but curious. "Nothing serious, Your Majesty," Selwyn replied quickly. "Just a minor disturbance in the stables, probably nothing to worry about." The king nodded, trusting his guards' judgment. He had spent many years learning to rely on their experience and training. After all, the guards had accompanied him through countless rides, ceremonies, and even dangerous journeys outside the castle walls. Today, however, there was a sense that the disturbance would remain minor, a small ripple in an otherwise perfect morning. They continued their ride along the cobblestone paths, passing the eastern gardens where the flowers were in full bloom. Roses of deep red and delicate pink filled the air with a gentle fragrance, mingling with the earthy smell of the freshly watered gardens. The king smiled, patting Orion's neck as they moved. "It seems even a small disturbance cannot spoil a beautiful morning," he said lightly, hoping to reassure the younger guard, Joran, who still looked uneasy. But Joran could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. He had grown up in the castle, knowing its routines and rhythms better than most. He could sense when the normal flow of activity had been interrupted, and his instincts told him that today, the peace of the morning might be broken. He scanned the gates leading into the main courtyard and noticed a figure running toward them, waving frantically. The messenger's pace was urgent, and his expression was one of worry. "Your Majesty," Joran said, raising his hand slightly to gain the king's attention, "there's a messenger coming. He seems to have urgent news." The king slowed Orion to a gentle walk, giving the messenger space to approach. "Let him speak," Aldrich said, his voice calm but attentive. "There is no reason to panic yet." The messenger arrived, out of breath and wide-eyed. "Your Majesty, pardon the urgency, but there's been an incident near the stables. One of the horses has broken free and is running toward the outer courtyard. The guards are struggling to control it." Aldrich's eyes widened slightly, though he kept his voice steady. "Which horse?" he asked, concern creeping into his tone. "The new stallion, Your Majesty," the messenger replied, glancing nervously at the horse guards. "He startled the others, and now the situation is difficult to manage." For a brief moment, time seemed to slow. The king realized that even in the controlled environment of the castle, unpredictability could strike. He felt a surge of worry, not for himself, but for the safety of the horses and the castle staff. The horse guards immediately formed a strategy. Selwyn turned to the others, giving quick instructions. "We'll approach calmly without causing panic. Aldrich stays with Orion, he must remain steady. Joran, you circle to the left, I'll take the right. We'll guide the loose horse back safely." The plan was simple but required precision. Horses could sense fear, and any sudden movements might make the situation worse. Aldrich nodded, patting Orion reassuringly. "Let's proceed carefully. Remember, safety first." The guards moved into position, their horses matching the rhythm of Orion's steps. The tension in the air grew, but there was still a sense of controlled order. The king's heart beat faster than usual, a mix of excitement and concern. He realized that even the most perfect morning could take an unexpected turn, and it was up to him and his loyal guards to handle it calmly. As they neared the stables, they could see the chaos unfolding. The new stallion, a young and spirited horse, had broken free from its enclosure. Its movements were frantic, and it was inadvertently causing other horses to panic. The stable hands were trying to intervene, but they could not calm the situation entirely. The horse guards approached carefully, using their presence to guide the stallion without spooking it further. Aldrich stayed close to Orion, whispering gentle words and keeping the stallion calm. He had learned that horses responded not just to physical commands, but to the energy of the rider. His calm presence was a steadying force, allowing the guards to maneuver strategically around the panicked animal. For several tense minutes, the situation remained delicate. Every movement had to be calculated, every approach careful. One wrong step could trigger a domino effect, causing multiple horses to bolt and creating chaos in the courtyard. The guards coordinated seamlessly, signaling each other with subtle gestures and shifting their positions to block escape routes. Despite their skill, the unpredictability of the horse made the moment nerve-wracking. Joran's heart pounded, and he could feel his palms growing sweaty beneath his gloves. Selwyn, though experienced, maintained a tense focus, knowing that one mistake could escalate the incident. Aldrich's calm demeanor was the anchor, but even he could feel a flicker of concern. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the stallion began to respond to the coordinated efforts of the guards. Joran managed to gently guide it toward the side gate, while Selwyn's presence kept the animal from panicking further. The stallion's pace slowed, and soon it was safely back in its enclosure. The other horses, seeing the calm restored, followed suit, settling into a more peaceful rhythm. The stable hands let out sighs of relief, brushing sweat from their brows. The tension that had gripped the stables dissipated, replaced by the familiar calm of the morning. Aldrich patted Orion's neck again, smiling gently. "Well done," he said, his voice filled with quiet pride. "Everyone stayed calm and acted with care. That is why we succeed, even when things go wrong." Joran exhaled slowly, feeling a mix of exhaustion and satisfaction. He had faced his first real test as a horse guard in a high-pressure situation, and though it had been terrifying, he had learned the importance of remaining calm, coordinated, and focused. Selwyn placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, giving a small nod of approval. "You did well," he said simply. "Today was a challenge, but we handled it. That is what matters." For King Aldrich, the incident was a reminder of the fragile balance between order and chaos. Even in a controlled environment like a castle, life could be unpredictable. Yet it was in these moments that courage, teamwork, and calm thinking proved most valuable. The morning had begun perfectly, but the minor disturbance had taught lessons that would not soon be forgotten. By the time the horses were settled, the sun had climbed higher in the sky, casting a warm light across the courtyard. The calm of the morning had returned, though now it carried a sense of awareness. Everyone in the castle knew that even the simplest day could hold surprises, and that being prepared, patient, and thoughtful was key to navigating life's unexpected turns. King Aldrich took a deep breath, feeling a renewed sense of appreciation for his loyal guards and the animals in his care. Though the morning had been interrupted, it had not been ruined. In fact, it had strengthened their bond, reminding them all that even in moments of challenge, they could rely on one another. The ride continued, albeit with a more cautious pace. The horses moved steadily, the guards vigilant but composed. Aldrich's smile returned, tempered by the understanding that perfection was fleeting, and that sometimes the unexpected moments made life richer, more meaningful, and more memorable. The castle, once again peaceful, seemed to reflect this new balance. The banners fluttered gently, the birds resumed their cheerful songs, and the distant sound of water in the fountains was steady and calm. For King Aldrich, the morning was no longer just perfect, it was real, filled with lessons, trust, and the quiet satisfaction of overcoming a challenge together. The castle grounds, which had seemed so peaceful only moments ago, now hummed with a sense of anticipation. King Aldrich and his horse guards had just returned the loose stallion to its enclosure, and while the immediate danger was over, there was an unspoken awareness that the morning's perfect calm could be fleeting. The king, feeling a mixture of relief and lingering concern, guided Orion toward a wide-open courtyard that stretched out like a polished stone stage beneath the rising sun. Orion's hooves clopped softly against the stones, and the horse guards flanked the king in formation, their polished boots and gleaming armor reflecting the early morning light. There was still a sense of order, but the tension from the earlier incident lingered like a shadow at the edges of the castle walls. The guards whispered quietly among themselves, making sure everyone remained alert while keeping the king's mood steady. King Aldrich allowed his gaze to wander over the courtyard, noticing details that he often overlooked in the midst of his busy days. The fountain at the center sparkled in the sunlight, and the water danced in arcs that caught the light like tiny jewels. The flowers lining the edges of the courtyard swayed gently in the breeze, their colors vibrant against the gray stone. For a moment, he felt a sense of calm return. The morning, though shaken, still held its beauty. Yet despite the apparent serenity, the king could feel the subtle movements of the horses around him. Orion was alert, ears pricked forward, muscles tense beneath the sleek coat. The other horses mirrored his energy, their instincts picking up the slight changes in the atmosphere. Horses were sensitive creatures, and even a small disturbance could quickly escalate if not managed carefully. Aldrich patted Orion's neck gently. "Steady now," he whispered, a reminder for both horse and rider that composure was key. Suddenly, a loud, unexpected noise shattered the relative calm. A cart had tipped over near the castle gates, sending barrels and crates tumbling to the ground. The sound echoed across the courtyard, startling the horses. Orion jerked forward instinctively, neighing loudly, and the guards had to react quickly to maintain control. The sudden chaos transformed the orderly scene into a swirl of motion, hooves clattering, armor jingling, and voices calling out commands. Selwyn, the experienced horse guard, shouted instructions, his voice carrying over the noise. "Circle to the right, keep the king steady. Calm the horses." The other guards responded immediately, guiding their mounts in precise movements to block any potential danger while ensuring the king remained balanced. The young guard Joran felt his heart race, adrenaline coursing through him as he tried to keep his own horse steady while assisting others. The overturned cart had created a chain reaction. One of the stable horses, hearing the commotion, began to panic. It bolted across the courtyard, kicking up small clouds of dust and colliding lightly with a fence. The other horses, sensing fear in their companions, reacted instinctively. Soon, the orderly formation of the king's ride was disrupted. The scene that had started as a peaceful morning now teetered on the edge of chaos. King Aldrich, despite his shock, remained focused. He leaned slightly forward, using his experience and calm energy to influence Orion. "Easy now," he murmured, keeping his voice steady even as the horses around him moved unpredictably. The stallions and mares responded to his tone, slowing slightly, but the threat was far from over. The guards continued to maneuver with skill, their years of training evident in the way they communicated silently through gestures and subtle shifts in position. As the situation intensified, the castle staff rushed into action. Stable hands and servants ran toward the horses, some waving their arms to guide them back to safe areas, while others moved to clear obstacles in their path. Even the castle children, who had been watching the morning ride from a safe distance, gasped in surprise, their playful chatter replaced by wide-eyed astonishment. The courtyard had become a stage for controlled chaos, where every participant, human and horse alike, had to act carefully to prevent disaster. In the midst of the turmoil, Joran felt a surge of fear, but also determination. He had trained for years for moments like this, and now he was living one. He urged his horse forward, intercepting a young mare that had broken from the formation. Speaking softly and using gentle movements, he guided her toward a calmer area near the garden wall. The mare responded, her panic subsiding slightly, and Joran felt a small victory in the midst of the storm. Selwyn, riding alongside, noticed the king's focus and gave a brief nod of acknowledgement. Aldrich's calm demeanor was contagious, spreading through the guards and even the horses. The coordinated effort began to work. The panicked animals gradually slowed, the sudden bursts of movement became controlled, and the chaos, though still present, was now manageable. Yet the morning was far from over. Just as the group began to regain some stability, Orion shifted suddenly, sensing movement from the far side of the courtyard. A shadow had passed quickly near the castle walls, a stray cat perhaps, or another small animal. Orion's muscles tensed again, and he neighed sharply, drawing attention. The other horses, already on edge from the earlier events, reacted instinctively. The courtyard erupted once more into a flurry of motion. Guards shouted instructions, horses galloped in tight circles, and King Aldrich held firm in the saddle, his hands steady on the reins. He leaned back slightly, using his weight to calm Orion, speaking softly as the stallion's ears flicked back and forth, trying to identify the source of concern. The incident, though chaotic, revealed the strength of the bond between the king and his horse. Aldrich's calm voice and deliberate movements began to influence Orion, whose initial panic slowly faded into cautious alertness. The other guards noticed the change, adjusting their approach accordingly. They moved like a single, cohesive unit, anticipating the horses' reactions and guiding them back toward a more stable formation. Minutes felt like hours as the tension in the courtyard reached its peak. Dust swirled around the hooves of the horses, sunlight glinted off armor, and the sound of neighing filled the air. Every movement mattered. One misstep could send the horses into full panic, potentially causing injuries or damage to the castle property. The young guard Joran felt every muscle in his body tense, his focus absolute. He realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act wisely despite it. Finally, through the combined effort of the king, the horse guards, and the castle staff, the chaos began to subside. The loose horses were guided into secure areas, the overturned cart was righted, and the stable hands corralled the remaining animals. Orion, now calm and responsive, trotted steadily beside the king, who patted his neck in silent praise. The tension that had gripped the courtyard slowly melted away, replaced by a cautious relief. King Aldrich took a deep breath, allowing himself a moment to absorb what had just occurred. The morning, which had begun perfectly, had turned into a test of skill, courage, and teamwork. Yet despite the unexpected turmoil, no one had been seriously hurt, and the horses were safe. The incident had reminded everyone present that even the most controlled environments could be unpredictable, and that true mastery required patience, composure, and trust in one another. Selwyn rode closer to the king, lowering his voice. "Your Majesty, we handled it well," he said quietly. "The morning may have been interrupted, but the outcome could have been far worse. You led by example and the guards followed. That made all the difference." Aldrich nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Yes," he replied. "The chaos is never to be feared if we face it with calm and purpose. Today was a reminder that perfection is fragile, but preparation, courage, and trust can guide us through even the most unexpected moments." Joran, still catching his breath, looked around at the horses, guards, and staff. He realized how much he had learned in just a few intense minutes. The experience had shown him that being a horse guard was not just about riding skill or physical strength. It was about observation, quick thinking, and staying calm under pressure. The castle courtyard, now settling back into calm, seemed almost serene compared to the chaos that had erupted minutes earlier. The sunlight reflected off the fountain, the flowers swayed gently in the breeze, and the horses grazed or stood quietly, their coats glistening. King Aldrich allowed himself a small smile, grateful that the situation had ended safely, but aware that the day was far from over. As the group resumed their ride, this time at a slower, more measured pace, the king reflected on the morning's lessons. Even a perfect day could hold surprises. Even the most disciplined guards and trained horses could face unexpected challenges. Yet, in facing these challenges, bonds were strengthened, skills were tested, and confidence was built. The morning had started with calm and beauty, moved through chaos, and now settled into a deeper, richer understanding of what it meant to lead and protect. For King Aldrich, the events of the morning reinforced an important truth, that life, like riding a horse, required balance. One had to remain steady in the saddle, even when the path became unpredictable. And with patience, courage, and the support of trusted companions, even the most chaotic moments could be navigated with grace and wisdom. The chaos of the morning had passed, but the castle courtyard still carried the echoes of the recent events. The horses were now calm, grazing quietly or standing with their heads lowered, but the memory of their panic lingered in the minds of the guards and the castle staff. King Aldrich dismounted from Orion, allowing the stallion a moment to rest. The soft rustle of his hooves on the cobblestones was a gentle reminder of the calm that had finally returned. The young guard Joran's heart was still pounding. He ran his hands over his armor, brushing away the dust that had settled during the frenzy. Though exhausted, he felt a quiet pride. He had faced a situation he would never forget, and despite his fear, he had acted decisively and calmly when it mattered most. Selwyn, noticing his expression, gave him a nod of approval. "You performed well," Selwyn said quietly. "Moments like this define who we are as guards." The castle staff and stable hands began assessing the aftermath of the chaos. The overturned cart had scattered its contents. Barrels of grain, crates of tools, and bundles of fresh hay lay strewn across the stone. Some of the barrels had cracked, spilling their contents, while a few tools were dented or broken. The staff moved quickly to salvage what they could, working with a sense of urgency tempered by careful attention. Even in the wake of chaos, order was being restored. King Aldrich observed the scene with a thoughtful expression. He could see the worry on the faces of the younger guards, the stable hands, and the servants. Though no one had been seriously hurt, the morning's events had shaken them. Aldrich understood that moments of chaos could leave a lasting impression, especially on those less experienced. He approached the group, his presence immediately commanding attention without causing fear. "Everyone did remarkably well," the king said, his voice calm and steady. "The horses were frightened and the situation was unpredictable, yet we faced it together with patience and focus. That is something to be proud of." His words brought relief and reassurance. The tension in the courtyard eased, replaced by a quiet sense of accomplishment. The castle staff straightened, stable hands held their heads high, and the guards relaxed their shoulders slightly. They had survived a test, and the king's recognition made them feel seen and appreciated. Despite the calm, Aldrich knew there were lessons to be learned. He walked slowly through the courtyard, inspecting the horses, checking their saddles, and speaking softly to each one. Orion nuzzled his hand, calm and steady, a reminder of the bond they shared. The king believed that every incident, even frightening ones, provided an opportunity for growth, for both humans and animals. The guards gathered around, forming a circle to discuss what had happened. Selwyn spoke first, recounting the events as they had unfolded. "The initial commotion was caused by a cart tipping over," he explained. "That startled the horses, and the reaction spread quickly. However, the king's calm presence helped maintain control, and we were able to guide the animals safely. Joran, still catching his breath, added his observations. "I noticed that some of the younger horses were more sensitive to noise," he said. "We might need to train them further so they remain steady even in unexpected situations." Aldrich nodded thoughtfully. "That is wise," he replied. "Training and preparation are essential, but we must also understand that even the best training cannot prevent every surprise. What matters is how we respond. Courage, patience, and clear thinking are as important as skill." The discussion continued, focusing on ways to prevent similar incidents in the future. They decided to implement additional safety measures, reinforcing enclosures, checking carts and equipment more carefully, and scheduling more frequent training exercises for the horses. Even small adjustments, Aldrich knew, could make a significant difference in maintaining safety and order within the castle. As the plans were made, Aldrich took a moment to reflect on the broader implications of the morning's events. The incident, though minor in the grand scheme of the kingdom, had revealed how quickly a perfect day could change. It reminded him that leadership was not just about making decisions in calm moments, but also about guiding others through unexpected challenges with wisdom and composure. Meanwhile, the stable hands worked tirelessly to return the courtyard to its normal state. Barrels were uprighted, crates replaced, and hay neatly stacked. The horses were groomed and checked for any signs of stress or injury. Even the youngest stable hands, who had been frightened at first, were now more confident, having witnessed the combined efforts of the king and guards in handling the situation. King Aldrich moved among them, offering words of encouragement. "Your quick thinking made a difference today," he said to one of the young stable boys. "Do not forget that even small actions contribute to the safety and harmony of the castle. Courage is not only in grand acts but also in attentiveness and care." The words resonated deeply with the staff. They realized that every member of the castle, from the highest-ranking guard to the youngest servant, played a vital role in maintaining order and safety. The incident had been a reminder that teamwork and attentiveness were essential, not just for survival, but for the well-being of everyone in the castle. Even the guards took a moment to assess themselves. They reviewed their positions, their actions, and their responses. Joran, in particular, reflected on his role. He realized that fear was natural, but it could be managed with focus and training. He understood that being a guard was as much about mental preparedness as physical skill. Selwyn, observing the younger guard, felt a sense of pride. "You handled yourself well under pressure," he said again. "Remember this lesson. It will serve you in all future challenges." The king, satisfied that order had been restored, allowed himself a moment to breathe. The sun had risen higher now, bathing the courtyard in a warm glow. The fountain sparkled, the flowers swayed gently, and the horses stood quietly, their coats gleaming in the sunlight. For a brief moment, the morning's chaos seemed like a distant memory, replaced by a renewed sense of calm and purpose. Yet, the experience lingered in everyone's minds. They understood that while the immediate danger had passed, the memory of fear and the lesson learned would remain. It was a reminder of the delicate balance between control and unpredictability, between peace and chaos. And it was a lesson that King Aldrich, along with his guards and staff, would carry forward in every aspect of life within the castle. As the day progressed, Aldrich led the horses and guards through a series of exercises designed to reinforce their training. They practiced maneuvers, coordinated movements, and response drills. The horses became more confident, the guards more vigilant, and the bond between man and animal grew stronger. The incident had served as both a challenge and an opportunity, a chance to improve, to learn, and to strengthen the connections that made the castle a place of safety and harmony. In the afternoon, King Aldrich allowed himself a moment of reflection. Sitting on a bench near the main fountain, he watched as the staff moved about their duties. The guards performed their exercises, and the horses grazed peacefully. He realized that the day, though interrupted by chaos, had become one of growth, understanding, and resilience. The perfect morning had evolved into a meaningful one, filled with lessons that would not be forgotten. The young guards and stable hands, inspired by the king's composure, began to take more initiative in their duties. They checked enclosures, ensured equipment was secure, and communicated more clearly with one another. The shared experience of facing chaos and restoring order had instilled a sense of responsibility and confidence that could not be taught in ordinary lessons. King Aldrich, observing this transformation, felt a quiet pride. Leadership, he understood, was not measured only in victories or grand gestures. It was measured in the ability to guide others, to instill courage, and to foster trust. The morning's incident had revealed weaknesses, but it had also revealed strengths, both in himself and in those around him. By evening, the castle courtyard had returned to a serene state. The sun began to lower, casting long shadows across the stone paths. The horses rested comfortably in their stables, and the guards stood in relaxed formations, chatting quietly among themselves. The castle staff moved with calm efficiency, their confidence renewed. The day, once threatened by chaos, had been reclaimed through courage, patience, and collaboration. King Aldrich stood quietly, taking in the scene. He knew that life would always bring unexpected challenges, but he also knew that with preparation, calm thinking, and trust in those around him, even the most chaotic situations could be managed. The morning's events had been a test, and they had passed it together. It was a reminder that leadership, courage, and teamwork were not just lessons for moments of danger, but for every day of life. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, bathing the castle in golden light, the king felt a deep sense of gratitude for his loyal guards, his devoted staff, his trusted horses, and the lessons that had turned a chaotic morning into a meaningful, unforgettable day. The castle had grown quiet as evening approached, the golden sunlight spilling over the walls and casting long shadows across the cobblestone courtyard. King Aldrich stood near the main fountain, watching as the last rays of the sun reflected in the water, making it sparkle like scattered jewels. The events of the morning and afternoon lingered in his mind, a mixture of relief, reflection, and quiet pride. What had begun as a perfect Saturday, interrupted by chaos, had now transformed into a day filled with lessons, growth, and understanding. The horses had been returned to their stables, groomed and calm, their usual dignified demeanor restored. Orion, the king's prized stallion, nuzzled his hand as he passed, the bond between them stronger than ever after the morning's trials. Aldrich smiled gently, running his fingers along the horse's sleek mane. "Thank you for staying steady today," he whispered, a quiet acknowledgement of the animal's role in restoring order. Horses, he often thought, had a way of teaching patience and trust that no human could match. The castle guards gathered near the fountain, removing their helmets and loosening their armor after the day's unexpected exertions. There was a sense of camaraderie among them, a silent acknowledgement that they had faced a challenge together and emerged stronger for it. Even Joran, the young guard who had felt fear earlier in the day, now stood tall with a sense of confidence and accomplishment. Selwyn, noticing his younger colleague's demeanor, gave him a small nod of approval. "Today was difficult," Selwyn said quietly, "but you handled yourself admirably. Remember this feeling, it will guide you in the future." Aldrich addressed the assembled guards and castle staff, his voice calm yet commanding attention. "Today was a reminder," he began, "that life rarely unfolds exactly as we expect. Even the most peaceful mornings can turn into tests of courage and composure. What matters is not that the challenges came, but how we responded. Each of you acted with care, patience, and determination. For that, I am grateful." The words resonated deeply with everyone present. The tension and anxiety from the morning's chaos had faded, replaced by a quiet sense of accomplishment. The castle staff, who had been frightened at first, now stood with renewed confidence. They had witnessed the king's calm leadership and the skill of the guards, and in doing so, had learned the value of composure under pressure. The experience had strengthened the bonds among them, a reminder that even in moments of fear, unity and trust could prevail. King Aldrich walked slowly through the courtyard, observing the surroundings with a thoughtful eye. The flowers, still vibrant despite the earlier commotion, seemed to represent resilience. The fountains continued their gentle, rhythmic flow, unbothered by the events of the day. Even the cobblestones, scuffed and dusty from the galloping horses, carried a sense of history and continuity. Life, he reflected, went on. It adapted, and those who faced challenges with courage emerged stronger. He paused near a bench where a few of the guards were resting. "What did we learn today?" he asked softly, not as a test, but as a way to encourage reflection. Selwyn spoke first. "That preparedness matters, but calmness matters more. The moment we lose control of our thoughts, we risk losing control of the situation." Joran added, his voice steady, "That fear is natural, but it can be managed. Acting with focus and care can turn a dangerous situation into a manageable one." Aldrich nodded thoughtfully. "Exactly. Fear is not the enemy, it is a signal. How we respond to it defines our strength. Today, we were tested, and we passed not because the situation was easy, but because we stayed composed, trusted one another, and acted wisely." The young stable hands who had witnessed the chaos looked at the king with admiration. They had learned lessons that went beyond handling horses. They had learned about responsibility, courage, and teamwork. Even small actions, they realized, could make a significant difference in moments of crisis. The morning's events had taught them more than any routine day of training could. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, the castle courtyard took on a peaceful beauty. The guards and staff slowly dispersed, returning to their quarters and duties, while the king remained near the fountain, reflecting on the day. He thought about how quickly events could change, how unpredictable life could be, and how important it was to remain calm, thoughtful, and prepared. He also reflected on the horses, whose sensitivity and responsiveness had played a key role in the morning's events. Animals, he realized, were mirrors of human emotion. They sensed fear, excitement, and calm. By remaining steady and kind, humans could influence them positively. This lesson, though simple, had been proven in the most dramatic way today. Aldrich smiled, thinking about Orion. The stallion had faced fear and uncertainty, yet he had responded to guidance and trust. The king knew that leadership, whether over people or animals, required patience, understanding, and empathy. It was not simply about giving orders. It was about inspiring confidence and creating a sense of safety and trust. That evening, the king called the guards and key staff together for a final meeting. The focus was on reflection, on understanding what had occurred and how they could be even better prepared in the future. The conversation was calm and constructive, emphasizing learning rather than blame. Aldrich encouraged open dialogue, asking for suggestions on how to prevent similar incidents, how to improve communication, and how to strengthen the bond between guards and horses. Ideas flowed freely. One guard suggested regular drills for both young and older horses, designed to maintain calmness under sudden disturbances. Another proposed improvements to the stability of carts and equipment near the stables. The staff contributed ideas about safety protocols and better ways to communicate in moments of urgency. Every suggestion was noted, every thought valued. Aldrich believed that the wisdom of many minds was greater than the skill of a few. By the time the meeting concluded, the castle had settled into evening calm. Torches were lit along the walls, casting flickering shadows that danced across the courtyard. The horses rested in their stables, their coats shining in the torchlight, and the guards patrolled the perimeter, ensuring that security remained uncompromised. The events of the day had tested them, but they had grown stronger, more confident, and more cohesive as a team. King Aldrich took a final walk through the courtyard, reflecting on the meaning of the day. Life, he realized, was full of unexpected challenges. Even a morning that seemed perfect could turn into a test of courage, patience, and leadership. Yet it was in those moments that true strength was revealed. The morning's chaos, though frightening at the time, had been a gift in disguise, a lesson in resilience, trust, and teamwork. He paused at the edge of the courtyard, looking out over the castle gardens, where the flowers swayed gently in the evening breeze. Children who had been watching earlier in the day waved from a safe distance, their laughter returning to the air. The king smiled, knowing that they had witnessed not just the excitement, but also the courage and composure required to face challenges. Aldrich reflected on how each person in the castle had contributed to the resolution of the morning's chaos. The guards, with their training and quick thinking, had maintained control. The stable hands, with their knowledge of the horses, had prevented further harm. Even the younger guards, like Joran, had discovered their own inner strength. Together, they had created a network of support that allowed the morning's events to end safely. As darkness fell, the king allowed himself a quiet moment of gratitude. He was grateful for the loyalty and skill of his guards, for the dedication of his staff, and for the wisdom of his animals. He understood that leadership was not a solitary role. It was a responsibility shared among those who served alongside him. The day had begun perfectly, had been interrupted by chaos, and had ended in understanding, growth, and strengthened bonds. Finally, Aldrich returned to the castle, feeling a sense of fulfillment. The day's events had been challenging, yet meaningful. He knew that the lessons learned would carry forward, not just for him, but for everyone in the castle. Patience, calmness, courage, teamwork, and trust were not just ideals. They were practical tools for navigating life, both in times of peace and in moments of turmoil. As he settled into his chambers, Aldrich allowed himself to smile. The morning that had gone perfectly, only to be disrupted by unexpected events, had transformed into a day he would never forget. It was a reminder that life's unpredictability could be met with calm, courage, and wisdom, and that even in moments of chaos, there was an opportunity for growth, learning, and connection. The castle was quiet, the horses rested, the guards stood ready, and King Aldrich felt a deep sense of peace. Though the morning had not gone as planned, the day had become perfect in its own way, perfect in lessons learned, bonds strengthened, and the quiet satisfaction of having faced challenges together. And as the stars began to appear in the night sky, shining above the castle walls, King Aldrich closed his eyes, grateful for the day, for the people and animals who served him, and for the reminder that even in unexpected moments, courage and calm could guide anyone to a safe and meaningful outcome.